Welcome to West Country Wanderings and welcome to another one of my monthly vlogs. It's the monthly vlog for the month of March 2023. Today I'm delighted to say I'm in the village of Down Ampney in Gloucestershire, very close to the border here with Wiltshire too. It's the birthplace of a very famous English composer, and today I'll tell you a little bit about his life, but also in today's video include some of his music to do, and I'm sure you'll be familiar with it. I'd also be telling you what's been happening on the channel over the month and also be reading out the very best of your comments too. So why not join me here on West Country Wanderings in the village of Down Ampney in Gloucestershire. Terrific signs of spring here in the churchyard here at Down Ampney. Before I tell you exactly where we are, just wanted to clear up a clarification about the pronunciation of the village's name. Now, if you go on to Wikipedia and on a couple of other sites, you'll see that they emphasise that the village has a silent P. In other words, pronounced Down Ampney. Now, I'm from Gloucestershire and lots of people know this village in this part of the world, of course. And we've always pronounced it Down Ampney with a P. Not a harsh P, but it's certainly clearly pronounced. I've just spoken to a couple of villagers before I started filming here. They live in the village and they definitely pronounce it with the P. So I'm emphasising that it's definitely Down Ampney and not Down Ampney with the silent P. And I would argue the case that Wikipedia is completely wrong on this occasion. If you know any more information about that, please drop a comment below, because I know I try as best I can to get pronunciations of places right, but as I say, going on the people that I spoke to here and my own prior knowledge and relatives that I spoke to, it's definitely Down Ampney. So it's great to see spring, and today is a lovely dry and partially sunny day here in Gloucestershire, but this month has been particularly difficult with filming. Most of the month has been really wet, which is why the output of my videos has been a little less than usual. Before we go on to the videos and before we go on to about the village, just to tell you exactly where we are, we're about 6 miles to the east of the Roman town of Cirencester, which is like a hub of all the Roman roads. I've mentioned that before. I think it's recently been voted the best town in the southwest to live. I was a bit sceptical about those sort of things, but yeah, it is a nice town. I'm not disagreeing with that, but there are obviously lots of lovely towns in the southwest of England, as you've probably seen from my channel and watching other YouTubers around this part of the world too. It also is close to Fairford, and I'll probably pop into Fairford there. I've done a couple of videos on that, and I'll drop those in the description of those in today's video too, if you want to see what Fairford is like. That's a lovely little town. And also, we're also in the Cotswold Water Park. That's just the lakes of that, the Lechlade section of it is just a couple of miles to the south of this village here too. Down Ampney is a bit of what they call a straggling village. That makes it sound rather untidy. It's not. The church is set back a bit further from the actual centre of the village, and I'll mention the reason why. You can probably guess why. And the rest of the village is spread out across the lanes, and then it's kind of just a little bit south of the A417, which is the main road that goes between Cirencester, Farringdon and on down to Reading in Berkshire. Beautiful place. I've got some birdsong now. I had some people cutting grass earlier, but now it's nice and quiet before we continue our journey here on this vlog today in Down Ampney. So the first video that landed on my channel after my Wigmore Castle vlog last month, at the end of February, I went to northwest Herefordshire, right in the top far corner of the area that I cover to do Wigmore Castle. And the first video that landed after that, I was right down the far end, the other end of the area that I cover. I was down on the southern tip, not quite the southern tip, and I wasn't on the Lizard, but I was at a beach called Lansalos down there with my daughter. That seems quite a while ago now, but it was in March. And we were lucky to have a beautiful day to film there. It was absolutely tremendous place. I really enjoyed it. And not only was it a beautiful day, we had the entire beach to ourselves. There's a National Trust car park there, and when I pulled up there and just scanned my membership card to get a ticket for it, I realised there was no other cars there. Walked down to the beach, beautiful walk down that grove with the wood and the stream following along there, and was surprised to see there was no one else on the beach at all. And it was a fabulous time. That video has been really well received. And the top comment on that video comes from a gentleman called Malcolm Richardson, and I thank you very much for your comment, Malcolm. Malcolm writes, "Lovely portrait of a timeless, tranquil Cornish haven. The sound of the waterfall and the gentle surf show how important water is, both to our physical and mental well-being." Yes, thanks for that, Malcolm. And yes, I certainly do find that too. Being near the sea and being in nature like we are today is really good for our mental well-being. We've had some really dark, wet, miserable days with rain, endless rain and high winds, and thankfully that stopped, only briefly, because that's why I've come out to film today, because after today we've got forecast more rain again, so it's good to get out if you can, while you can, to enjoy our surroundings for our own well-being. Now, the church that's in front of me is the Church of All Saints here at Down Ampney, and it was actually founded by the Knights Templar. We've come across them before. I did a video on one of their churches over in Herefordshire a little while ago now, and it was founded here in 1265. The tower is 14th century, but the most of the church fabric was restored by the Victorians around about 1865. And you're probably thinking, why is the village so far away from the parish church? Well, we can't be absolutely certain, but often when this happens, it's because of the plague and how it affected the church. Probably in the 13th century, a lot of the villagers would have died, and they decided to build a new village or new cottages, etc., further to the north of the village. We'll have a look around the village itself later on. But this place here, because the church is so away from the village, is great for filming, because it means this part of the village is really quiet. Now, in case you're wondering what's the other side of these very tall yew tree hedges here, it's Down Ampney House, which is an enormous property. There's a huge estate and they own lots of the land around here. They didn't always own this village. A lot of the village was owned by the Hungerford family, a very wealthy southwest family in terms of land ownership. They came from the village of Farley, Hungerford in Somerset, a place we'll probably visit on a future video because that's a really interesting village too. Later on, the Hungerford family and all of their wealth in this part of the world was taken over by the Eliot family, all the way down back in Cornwall again, from the Port Eliot estate near the village of St Germans. Now, my fellow YouTubers Cornish Walking Trails have recently done a video from St Germans and the Port Eliot estate because they've been filming there. But strangely, it's a drama that's actually based in Devon. Oh, terrible, and not Cornwall, but nearly all of it's been filmed in Cornwall. I'll put a link into the Cornish Walking Trails video in the description of today's. The next video that appeared on my channel though was over on the Severn Way, some way up from here. In fact, actually outside of the West Country Wanderings region that I cover. I will be coming back into it as we head south. And I was hoping to do another walk before we come to the end of the month, but as I say, the so much rain we've had has meant that's been impossible. Probably be another week or two before I'm back on the Severn Way again. But the section of the walk that I did then was from Ironbridge, which is a wonderful place, and there was so much to see on that first 2 or 3 miles of that walk. When we went to Coalport, had a look at the exterior of the old Coalport with the kilns, the huge kilns you could see there, and the Jackfield Tile Museum too. It's a terrific place, and that video has been really well received. I had a top comment from some fellow YouTubers as well. They're called Postcard on a Pint. Hi Rach and Wills, I met them in Shrewsbury last autumn too, and they write, We love Ironbridge. It's such a beautiful area around there. The bridge is stunning. We've never visited the Tar Museum, so thanks for the heads up. We've done Coalport. Love the look of that station house. That was such an idyllic walk. Thanks for bringing us along. Cheers. Thanks, Rach and Wills. Really appreciate that. What we're going to do now is we'll have a look inside of the church, because according to my notes, there are some monuments to the Hungerford family in there, and also some connections to this village and the Second World War too. Now, the inside of the church contains a number of elaborate monuments to the Hungerford family, including a 1637 Renaissance style monument to Sir John and St Anthony Hungerford. Among the medieval memorials are two recumbent effigy tombs of Sir Nicholas de Vere and Lady Margaret de Villers. The wooden fittings of the church included the pulpit, reredos, rood screen, and they were designed in 1898 by Charles Ponting. Now, there's a prominent stained glass window at the end of the church, and it's 20th century, and it's commemoration of the 271 Squadron and the RASC, who flew in Dakota aircraft from the airfield here at Down Ampney, just a little bit to the southwest of the church here, for the Battle of Arnhem in 1944. The church holds an annual Arnhem service in memory of the wartime operation. Another stained glass is dedicated to the memory of Reverend Arthur Vaughan Williams. Now, there's a clue. We'll be talking more about that name shortly. Now, RAF Down Ampney was active between 1944 and 1947, and 48 Squadron and 271 Squadron were both based there too. And as I say, it played a vital role in the Battle of Arnhem. And as well as the memorial service there, you can see the outlines of the airfield from aerial photographs. And they laid asphalt down when that site of that airfield was built there towards the end of the Second World War. And it's obviously the dedication of those fighter pilots where we were successful with the Battle of Arnhem too. The next video on the channel was back down further part of the southwest in Devon, and I was on Dartmoor there. I was actually spending a few days with my daughter, and thankfully the weather was pretty good at that very early part of March, and so things deteriorated much after. And we went up to Dartmoor to have a look at the ponies and horses, because my daughter has an affinity with ponies and horses, and in fact she regularly goes pony trekking on Bodmin Moor too. While I was there, and I set up just to do an initial piece to camera, I was delighted to see some horses running freely right across the moor. Beautiful. It was just one of those happenstance moments, just happened to be in the right place at the right time. I could probably have waited for weeks, if not months, to have set up a shot like that, but I was really grateful to see that. Then went on to the town, or the village should I say, not town, nowhere near is it a town, no, it's barely a village, of Postbridge, to have a look at the two bridges there too. It was only a short bite video. It seemed to have gone down really well, and one of my regular commenters on my channel is David Bellani from Spain, and he writes, "Wonderful port, I love Dartmoor. We used to stop at Becky Falls on the way down to Newquay. Later I came to know the moor through hiking. We did 10 tours. Well, that was 43 years ago. Still have my medal and the map. Much later, when I moved out here, I came armed with lots of books, including The Hound of the Baskervilles. I've worn that book out. I've been listening to it on LibriVox. There's quite a history attached to the novel, so I couldn't resist buying The Hound of the Baskervilles, Hunting, the Dartmoor Legend by Richard Cabell. As a footnote, Conan Doyle wrote his first Holmes novels in Southsea, about 5 minutes walk from where I used to live. Apart from being a novelist and a doctor, he was also a goalkeeper for one of the early teams that would later form Portsmouth Football Club. Wow, that's an amazing fact, David, and I thank you for a fabulous comment. Sorry I've had to shorten it a little bit for obviously to fit in with the video, but yeah, it's terrific, and thanks for that additional information. Yes, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was in fact a GP based for some time in Plymouth, well actually in Stonehouse, which at that point wasn't part of the city of Plymouth, it is now. And if you go to a place called Durnford Street where he had his practice, you'll see these bronze plaques set into the pavement with extracts from his novels, which featured the famous detective Sherlock Holmes, of which there is much association with Dartmoor. It's a terrific place, and I hope to revisit Dartmoor on the channel again in the not too distant future. Now, one of the reasons I decided to do my monthly vlog from this beautiful village here in Gloucestershire, both in the Cotswold Water Park and in the Cotswolds, is that I have an affinity with the person that was born in this village 151 years ago. And now there's no question of the pronunciation on this one. This is the birthplace of one Ralph Vaughan Williams. Yes, not Ralph. Ralph Vaughan Williams was born to Arthur Vaughan Williams, who was the vicar here at All Saints. He was their third child. And interesting, I went into the church just now, and the pulpit there is a little note attached to it. He was baptised here, that's Ralph Vaughan Williams. He was baptised here on the 1st of December 1872, and rather than his father actually baptise him, he got in a nearby vicar, I can't remember where he was from, but one of the neighbouring parishes, to do the baptism for him on his behalf. And horror of horrors, that vicar actually dropped poor Ralph. Thankfully, he was managed to be saved. I think it was in the skirt of one of the dresses of the people attending the baptism. So phew, that could have ended badly, because he was an incredible composer. In fact, he composed two of my most favourite pieces of music of all time. And I'll include some pieces of that towards the end of today's video. Now, last year in the church, a new piece of stained glass was put inside it here. I think it was visited by Princess Anne. I will check on that and put it in the usual way at the bottom. But they had a commemorative service here to celebrate 150 years of Ralph Vaughan Williams' life. And if you go into the church, there is an explanatory piece telling you all about that stained glass. I'll include some of the images that I took inside the church of it. If you come to the church to visit and try to find it, basically just head straight towards the altar, and it's on the right hand side there. Beautiful piece of stained glass, wonderfully celebrating Ralph Vaughan Williams' life. Now, I don't intend to try and give you a full biography of his life in today's video, because it is very, very detailed. His life has been really extensively detailed. Interestingly, though, there is a mural inside of the church which goes into great detail about who the people he worked with during his life till he passed away in the 1950s. And who the people he worked with in terms of on soundtracks as well. It's really fascinating, and I thoroughly recommend, I'll put in a couple of links in the description of today's video if you're interested in more information about Ralph Vaughan Williams' life. Now, dotted around the village here of Down Ampney are a number of abandoned buildings like this one here and the one just over there, and they're remnants from the Second World War from RAF Down Ampney. I've now moved away from the churchyard. And Down Ampney Airfield, it's just at the back of the camera there. We've got some fields here with some sheep in it, and the airfield was just the other side. There's not a lot to see there, but there is a memorial stone, as pointed out from the plaque. We are also close to RAF Fairford here, so excuse the aircraft noise going overhead. The site after the Second World War, I'm going to have to wait for that to go. Wow. The site after the Second World War was used what was known as a clearing hospital. Obviously there were a lot of injured casualties following the Second World War, and this was one of the locations where they had a hospital to help with all of that. In fact, the road that runs parallel to this field is still known as Hospital Road. Now, the next video to arrive on my channel for the month of March was Adventures on Bodmin Moor. So we're back in Cornwall again, and this one I did with my daughter Nicole. Also like my Lansalos Cornish beach video as well. She helped me out with some of the photography and the video on this one. We had a fantastic walk. It was very, very different weather conditions to what we had at Lansalos. The grey skies had come in, but there was like a pinkish tinge to the light. So it was really, really good for the photography and to get over the atmosphere to the landscape, to really give you that atmosphere. So it was perfect condition. I think it was been a blue sky, it probably would have not been the same. So we went up to the famous cheese ring and had a look around the stone circles at Minions as well, and also looking for that hidden lake inside the quarry. We had a spectacular time there. Really well received video, lots of really positive comments, so thank you if you commented on that video and indeed any of my videos for the month of March. And I had a top comment from a lady called Faith G, who comments on a lot of my videos, as does some of her family as well. So hi Faith, and to your family too. And she was just thanking me for the photographs there, and yeah, it's a very inspirational place for taking photographs. I took some monochrome photographs which really emphasises the contour and nature of the landscape with the granite there on Bodmin Moor in Cornwall. Now, Ralph Vaughan Williams was strongly influenced by English folk music. In terms of a range of his output, he did operas, he did ballets, he did English choral music, much else besides. But two of his most famous pieces of music, which are also two of my most famous pieces of music of all time, are Fantasia on the theme of Thomas Tallis and, of course, The Lark Ascending. Ralph Vaughan Williams is what is known as a late developer. He didn't really hit his stride till his late 30s, completely opposite to, say, a composer like Mozart, who was a very young prodigy, as we all know. It wasn't until he met the French composer one Maurice Ravel that he really got into his stride. Now, there are two episodes in Ralph Vaughan Williams' life which had a profound effect on him emotionally, which I think went into his creative work output too, musically. And the first one was the First World War. He actually served in the army in the First World War, and seeing the horrors of that, obviously, with everybody that did see that, it left a lasting impression on them. There's no doubt that it really did influence his musical works. The later one was, he was happily married when he was in his 60s, but he actually met a younger woman, much younger than him. And later on, he divorced his wife and remarried this much younger woman. And the emotional turmoil of that experience also had a lasting impression on him too. Now, the next video that landed on my channel was a bit different to most, and I don't really want to say too much about it, except it was a tribute to my late cousin Sam, or Samantha Evans. And I decided just to do a very, very simple little video rather than explain too much about her life. As I explained in the video, or put subtitles in the video, she was an army captain, a wife and a mother too. And sadly she died a few weeks ago. And I just thought a simple tribute would be to look at the signs of spring, of hope, and also because she liked animals, there was lots of bird life around the park there. And I went to a park in Cheltenham, the one that's on the grounds of University of Gloucestershire, just to make a very simple video about Sam's life. Now, Ralph Vaughan Williams did a fabulous quote about his collaborator Parry, and I'll read it to you in a minute. And I can really relate to this quote because what it says to me about the fact I've been influenced by, not I'm a musician, but I do like to take photographs, and I feel some of my photographers being influenced by some of the great photographers. I'm not a great photographer, but in that sense. But I do feel like some of the things I do creatively, photography, has been influenced by them. One of the channels I watch is a lady called T. Hopper, or Tatiana Hopper. She's an American. I think she might be a Canadian. I'm not sure. But she's got a brilliant YouTube channel. I'll put a description or a link to her channel in the description of today's video. And she talks about the lives of the great photographers and how that influences her. It's a brilliant channel if you're into photography. Anyway, I'm just going to read you the quote now that Ray Vaughan Williams said about Parry. Parry once said to me, "Write choral music as befits an Englishman and a democrat. We, pupils of Parry, have, if we have been wives, inherited from him the great English choral tradition, which Tallis passed on to Bird, Bird to Gibbons, Gibbons to Purcell, Purcell to Battishill and Green, and they in turn through the Wesleys to Parry. He has passed on the torch to us, and it is our duty to keep it alight." And I think that speaks so much, not just for music, but for any type of creative output, in terms of the great painters, the great musicians, the great actors as well. They learn from the people that have come before. I'm going to take a break now. I'm going to grab some lunch, something to drink, and while I do that, I'll show you a little bit more about the village. I'll just do a video clip of me walking through, well, not me walking through the village, walking through with my camera, so you can see what the rest of Down Ampney looks like. Enjoy. Now, the next video on the channel for the month of March was one of my Canal series. It was the Wilts and Berks Canal. It was number 3 in the series following the Wilts and Berks. And I went over to the beautiful Oxfordshire town of Abingdon-on-Thames. And of course, that's where the Wilts and Berks Canal ended and arrived into the River Thames, making its navigable way down to the capital of London, of course. Had a good look around there, and also the new section of the Wilts and Berks that's been built. And the name escapes me, but there's a junction there, Jubilee Junction, that's why, because it was to celebrate, was it the WRG, to one of the waterways restoration groups. I had lots of interesting comments on that, and one that was very, very informative, and I'll just read that to you now. It's from a gentleman called Charles Towler. Regarding the lack of recent restoration, because when I was there, the Jubilee Junction, I think, had been done in 2005, and nothing else has been done in that area, though there are lots of other sites that the Wilts and Berks are working on at the moment. At the end of the Wilts and Berks, it may be that uncertainty whether or not the Abingdon Reservoir project will proceed is blighting further work at this end of the Wilts and Berks. If the reservoir does proceed, a new canal alignment, and that'll be the second canal alignment, because the original alignment can't be used because housing has completely obliterated the original line of the Wilts and Berks and Abingdon, hence why they built Jubilee Junction. And if the reservoir does go ahead, and it'll mean, yeah, well, I won't go into the politics of it, but yeah, it will be devastating for that work, because it means that they'll have to choose a third new alignment to get it to connect over. And it says that it'll be required for most of the length between where the canal crossed the Great Western Main Line to the east of Grove and Jubilee Junction, which would presumably form part of the reservoir work. So yeah, potentially, I think this has been going as far as I could see from the 1990s. So what, you're nearly getting on for 20 years now. So the Wilts and Berks Canal Trust are living with that uncertainty. But yeah, well received video. So thank you if you watched it, liked it or shared it and commented it. Really, really do appreciate that. Now, the next two videos that landed on the channel were both in my railway series. The first one was a shorter video, was in the town of Tetbury, also here in the Cotswolds. And a few years ago now, I can't remember, 10, 15 years ago, the local community got behind a project to renovate and completely kit out the former GWR goods shed in the town there, where was on the goods yard site. Done a fabulous job, and they've turned it into a cinema and arts venue, and I took some photographs both inside and outside of that and walked a little bit along following the stream, which is actual fact a major source of the River Avon, which ends up in Bristol and thence Avonmouth. That video, although it was a short one, seemed to pick up really, really quickly. I was very, very surprised at how quickly it picked up. And I had a top comment on that video too. And the top comment comes from a gentleman called Ted Collins, who used to live in Gloucestershire. I think he now lives in Leicestershire. And the comment was, in the 1970s, I worked in Tetbury and was told an old tale that Treble House, and there was a halt on the line, the branch line from Tetbury to Kemble, where it meets the main line, called Treble House, from the Treble House Inn. And he goes on to say that the name came from incidences between the lads from Tetbury and Cirencester having a punch-up. That's an interesting tale. I don't think there's any truth in that, Ted, because on the research it goes on to state that the name comes from the trouble that had with the landlords, and I think sadly both of them later committed suicide between that inn and a neighbouring one. Also, I think the landladies got into fights as well. All kind of things seem to go on. I don't think anyone knows the definitive answer of why it's called Treble House, but I hope to do a railway walk walking from Tetbury to Treble House Inn in a later video. And the other one of those two railway series ones, there's another railway series one coming up in a bit I'll mention, was the second in my Lost Railway Walk series. I caught the train to Chippenham in Wiltshire and walked to the lovely town of Canal, following the old GWR branch line, which just runs for just over 5 miles. Had an interesting bridge on the going over the River Avon at the start of that walk, and we had a look at a couple of the halts that were en route there, and I was explaining about the history of that branch line too. I had a top comment from a lady called Cara, who runs a channel. Hi Cara, and congratulations to you on just getting to 1,000 subscribers. All your excellent hard work. Cara makes videos in and around the Wiltshire area, particularly on the North Wessex Down, looking at archaeological sites. They're brilliant videos. She thoroughly researches them, so very well deserved on getting your 1,000, Cara, and it's well worth checking out her channel, and I'll put a link again into the description of today's video. And Cara writes, beautiful walk and very interesting history to the area. Yes, the history, a lot of it to do with the branch line, was associated with Harris, the former meat production factory, which I think at one time employed 40% of all the people that lived in Canal. There will be another Lost Railway, I can never say that, railway walks coming up on the channel in the not too distant future. And the next video was the Gloucestershire Warwickshire Railway. I think it was my third, possibly fourth visit there actually. particularly looking around the Toddington Railway Centre. Look at the little toy museum they got there. I really thought that was fantastic. And we're watching a couple of trains coming and going. The Braveheart they had in steam on that particular day, and DMU, Heritage DMU, going backwards and forwards. I was trying to create or get a flavour for you of the atmosphere, that wonderful station at Toddington on the Gloucestershire and Warwickshire Steam Railway. Incidentally, the reason it's called Warwickshire is because that's where originally the line went to at Stratford. It's not in Warwickshire at the moment. It is going in Worcestershire, of course, because it ends up in Broadway, but hopefully at some point it will get back into Warwickshire again soon. Had a top comment on that video from Lionel and Mary Travels, who also have their own YouTube channel, and they write, that railway is one of the most authentic heritage lines we visited. I totally agree, it really is. Had a couple of days there just before the pandemic put a stop to things for a while. It really does look like a genuine country branch line, it does. The attention to detail was perfect. Must get back there again this year. Thanks, Paul. Yes, thank you, Lionel Mary, for writing the comment. Really appreciate that. Really enjoyed my day there. Before I go into the last video and bring this video to a conclusion with a snippet at the end, I just wanted to mention two people that give me a lot of support on the channel, and they run their own YouTube channels. One is a gentleman called Roy Edwards. Hi Roy, thank you very much, and thank you for always commenting on my videos. Roy's in Spain at the moment, and he's well worth checking out his videos from Spain. I think it's his second trip to Spain this year. That's really lucky, nice, sensible decision actually, with all the rain we've had here in March in England. So Roy lives not that far from me, just a bit further north in Worcestershire, but he's also a YouTuber. He's got some really brilliant videos, and also been doing ones from Spain, so why check out Roy's channel. Also another YouTuber I'd like to mention is Ron from Parkinsons Walks. Ron was one of the YouTubers, along with Abby Barnes and the other people I mentioned, like David from Cruising the Cut, that inspired me to start YouTube in the very first place. Ron does walks in and around Gloucestershire, Worcestershire and further afield, particularly exploring, a bit like me, old railway lines, amongst other things he does as well. So why not check out Ron's channel at Parkinsons Walk, and again put a link into that in today's video. And finally, that brings me up to the last video, and that was the town of Clevedon in North Somerset. I hadn't visited Clevedon for quite some time. It's a beautiful, beautiful town, and I mentioned in that video that I give it a 5-star rating. I stand by that. I think it's a fabulous one. Just on a technical point, I have had a little bit of technical difficulties with that video. Nothing to do with my cameras or editing. It's to do with YouTube, and when I uploaded the video, it uploaded fine, and it wouldn't finish processing. It was stuck. It was in a stuck processing mode. So I looked on YouTube to see the best way to sort that out, and one of the ways to do that is make a small edit to the video, which is what I did. It worked. It managed to get it published, but unfortunately it's meant that part of the video's got an obscured bit on it, and like an oval, because I was trying to do that in the last 5 seconds and it's taken out too much of the video. So I'm going to re-upload that video to Clevedon. I'll keep both versions up. I'll mark it, because if I delete the other one, you'll then lose all the comments, because I've now had to get in on for 300 views that video's had. So I'll republish that so it doesn't have the mark on there. I think next time what I'll have to do in future videos, I'll put a 5 or 10 second test card at the very end of the video, and then I can always slice that off if the same problem happens again. So yes, Clevedon, I really enjoyed my day there. It was a fabulous day, really terrific day there. And I had a top comment from a lady called Louise, who runs the Southwest Sundays channel. Thank you very much, Louise. Now, Louise writes, she actually gives me the information on how to pronounce the villages. There's 2 villages you go through. If you come off at the Portishead Junction, you go through 2 villages. I think one of them is called Easton in Gordano, and it's definitely pronounced as Gordano. And I've had that from a couple of voices since put that video up now. Louise used to live in the Portishead area, so local knowledge is always best. So thank you, Louise, for giving me the right information on the pronunciation of that, because I'm sure I'll be in that part of the North Somerset area in the not too distant future. She goes on to write, congratulations on many recent subscribers. And yes, I'd just like to add on to that. So thank you if you're a new subscriber to the channel. I did briefly mention that in that video too, but I really do appreciate that. I'm heading up to 1,600 now. I can't believe that. It's really grown a lot over the past few weeks. So thank you. So many fascinating facts and beautiful photography. I love the old images. I love that water fountain. Now, Louise actually has done her own video on Clevedon. She did it a few months ago. I think it was the end of summer, early autumn, and she caught Clevedon during the sunset. And again, In that video, I've linked through to it, so if you want to see what the Clevedon Pier looks like, a beautiful sunset, go and check out Louise's channel. The restaurant is such a beautiful structure too. So much in it for all types of viewer, from tourists to history and photography lovers. So thanks for Louise for a great comment. Yeah, so you've got that restaurant at the start of the pier. I think it's called The Box. It's like a perspex box when you go down the stairs, and then you can have that fabulous view while you eat your meal. There's also a cafe at the end of the pier too. It was really, really fabulous. Thank you very much for watching my videos this month. I really do appreciate it. Before I go, I'll just wrap the video up and tell you what's coming next in the month of April. Yes, I know this wall is starting to fall down. I'm not holding it up though, but they're looking like they are starting to repair. There was a plaque I saw earlier up, so they are in plans of restoration this lovely Cotswold stone wall here. So what's coming up for the month of April on West Country Wanderings? Well, quite a few things. I certainly hope to return to the Severn Way again and make my way down from the south of the town of Bridgnorth down, hopefully to the Worcestershire border, so we're proper in West Country Wanderings area before we head south to the city of Bristol. There'll also be a Cotswold Walk one, not sure where that's going to be yet. Somewhere around the Cotswold area, of course. They seem to be really popular, those now. When I first started, I was a bit like that, but yeah, so I'm not sure where that's going to happen yet, but I've got a few places in mind, but we'll see where we go. I did promise last time that will be a city one. Well, good news on that. That city video will be coming up over the next few days. Yeah, so you have to remain subscribed and hit the bell to find out which city that is in the West Country Wanderings region that I visited, so have a look out for that. I'll also be doing another railway series one. I hope to do one of the heritage lines as they gear up towards getting ready for Easter, of course. Not sure where that's going to be yet. Perhaps down to the West Somerset Railway, Dean Forest Railway, one of those probably. And we'll also be having a bit more coast. I did say this would happen in March, excuse the crows, but that'll be down on the Devon coast around the Exmouth area, so lots coming up here on the channel. I'd just like to close my monthly vlog for the month of March with some music from Ralph Vaughan Williams and some images of this beautiful village here down Ampney in Gloucestershire. Hope you enjoyed the vlog today. Love to hear from you. Please drop a comment below. Till next time, take care, all the best. Bye bye.